Welcome to Better Sex, where you get the information and inspiration to create and enjoy your best possible sex life. Join your host, sex therapist Jessa Zimmerman, as she brings you expert guests, helpful tips, knowledge, and strategies to improve your intimate relationships. And now, your host, Jessa Zimmerman.
Hey, welcome back. It's another episode of the Better Sex Podcast. This is Jessa here to welcome you and thank you for spending a little bit of time with me. I really appreciate it. Today's topic, we're talking about erotic blueprints, and I was trying to sort of frame up where I think this fits in the intimacy with ease method model, these sort of 4 pillars that creates easy intimacy. And I think I'm going to place this in pillar 4 under enjoy, which is maybe this is what comes when you've integrated a bunch of this new thinking and you can communicate. You've got the mindset around sex. You're on the same page with your partner. You've taken the stress out of your sex life. Now it's time to really dive into what makes it hot, arousing, And DD Haeg, who is my guest, is going to be talking about these erotic blueprints, 5 fundamental ones that are sort of like love languages, what they each are, how they work, what sort of the downsides are to each one. But then especially, how do we feed each other in this? How do we speak each other's language? How do we tend to each other's blueprints? How do we navigate this when we're not necessarily, in the same category as our partner, which I think in general we probably are not. So it's a really important conversation. Before we launch in, though, I do want to just mention, if you have not yet signed up for my free webinar training about how to make sex easy and fun for both of you, that is available at intimacywithease.com/training. So I hope you'll join me there. And again, that I sort of see as some of the groundwork in preparation for this exploration of erotic blueprints. So hope you enjoy the episode. And before we start the show today, it is sponsored by Intimacy with Ease. It's a method to help otherwise happy couples achieve a sex life that is easy and fun for both of them, so that you can actually just enjoy your sex life with 0 stress. For more information, if you want to watch a brief little training video that's available, all of that, go to intimacywithease.com. So DD, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thanks for having me. I'm so delighted to be here.
Yeah, this will be a fun topic. I love talking about eroticism. So
me too.
Yeah, so much of my work with couples, they're struggling in such foundational ways that I think of eroticism as a little bit of a not graduate level, but sometimes there's some things we have to deal with first before we get to have this conversation. So I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, for sure. That connection between the couple and the ability to communicate is so foundational, no matter where you're starting in your relationship. Mm-hmm.
Maybe you should define for us, if you don't mind, what is an erotic blueprint?
The erotic
First
blueprint.
of all, and then what are they? What kinds are there?
Yeah. The erotic blueprints are a way for us to understand how we're wired for turn on. So I like to think of it as giving us a map as to how to turn one another on. And so it's really great for couples. I like to liken it to the love languages. I'm guessing your listeners are probably familiar with the love languages.
I would imagine most people have heard of it, but they can look it up real quick too.
Yeah. Well, the love languages are a way to be able to communicate, right? Your love with your beloved, with anyone, your kids included. But the erotic blueprints are like the languages for you to understand how you and your partner are wired for turn on. So a lot of times what I see in my practice is a lot of times it's just a misfire between the couple of how they're coming to their intimacy together. And so the erotic blueprints are a really great sort of framework to help them understand how can you really feed and nourish one another. And so the erotic blueprints, there's 5 different types.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first type is called energetic. And the energetics tend to be people who like to be teased. They like to have a little bit of space. They prefer sort of lighter touch. They're turned on by anticipation. Now, some people think, well, that's kind of like, maybe foreplay or something like that. No, it's way deeper than that. This sense of spaciousness for the energetics is really, really important.
Okay.
So that's the first type.
All right.
Yeah. The second type is the sensual. The sensual blueprint is the type that is turned on by all of their senses being engaged. So they like to have ambience. They like to have romance. They're into the sensories, candles, baths, essential oils, those kinds of things. They just love to have all of the senses, music engaged.
Okay.
The third type is the sexual. And the sexual is very straightforward. They're the ones that go like 0 to 60 and they're turned on just like that.
Okay.
They love nudity. They love orgasms. They love penetration. They love like direct genital touch. They're very much a quickie. They love the quickies.
Okay, fast and furious, maybe, right?
Fast and furious is another great way of saying it. Yes. The fourth type is kinky. Now, this, I like to define kinky as anything that might seem sort of taboo to someone. So I always give the example that, for me, kinky might be making out in the backseat of my car. And for my grandma, it might be kissing my grandpa on the front porch or something, right? So however your definition of taboo is, it's usually the one that has a little bit more edge to it. There's kind of like a power edge, a power dynamic. There's a play there for sure.
Okay.
Okay. And then the fifth type is called the shapeshifter. Shapeshifters are like the smorgasbords. They love it all. They have all of those things. They're turned on by the energetic and the teasing, the sensuality, the massage. They're just really sophisticated. So it takes a little bit more with the shapeshifters to be able to be turned on, and their desire is a little bit more vast in that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So like love languages, I think is, I don't know that I've actually ever read the entire book. I think you have like 2, a primary and a second, 2 main ones and the rest not so much. Is the erotic blueprint the similar way? Do people really have one? Or is it like, I kind of straddle I get the shapeshifters across the board. But generally, do people have one main blueprint?
Great question. Like the love languages, we tend to operate out of one more than another, but absolutely. We have something what we call a stack. So you can learn what your stack is, right? Just like the percentages, you might be 80% energetic, 5% sensual, and, the rest follows down. So the most important step is for people to first know what their top or what their primary is so that they can begin to play within that more. And then when you get a little bit more sophisticated, you can also understand what your stack is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how does somebody figure out what theirs is if this is a new concept? Let's say most of the listeners have not heard this before, they've never really contemplated, some people are probably like, oh, right, that's it. But for somebody who maybe isn't as, aware or attuned to what really arouses
their body. For sure. There's a quiz that they can take. So if they want to reach out to me, I'd be happy to give them a quiz. I will say, though, that the quiz is just one aspect, right? The quiz is like that intellectual exercise. And what I love about the blueprints is it's not only an intellectual, but it's really like dialing into your body and trying to understand, how is my body responding? So what I've seen in my practices, sometimes people will come to me, they'll take the quiz, and then I'll have them do some body practices, and we'll actually find out that maybe they're not quite as sexual as they thought. Maybe they're a little bit more energetic. So I tend to see that sometimes in a lot of male identified beings, that they'll maybe present as sexual because that's, a very common social sort of norm and box that we see a lot of. And then when you actually start testing on their body, what you'll notice is they actually may be way more sensitive to energy than they realized.
Right. So maybe they just never knew to pay attention to anything but genitals, right? Like there's the mental expectation of what we think we should respond to, but I also think there's probably exposure that has limited, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, and not a lot of us grow up with the idea of energy and playing with energy. And so I've also found that energetic sex is one of my favorites. Like, I'm a total energetic. And so some people just don't even quite know how to wrap their head around that concept of what is energy. And, so I often talk about, if you've had a Reiki experience, or if you've had a massage and you've felt how you're all of a sudden feeling enlivened by it, often is just your chi, right? It's your life force energy.
Yeah.
That's moving through you. So sometimes it takes a little bit of education for people to open up and see some of what the other possibilities actually are.
All right. So this leads me to think of, I have another question. I'm wondering if, how do I put this? Like, if we have a main way at a blueprint, is that limiting, or is there, it seems to me there could be real benefit to expanding what we can be aroused by, right? Like, I don't want to, it's not like whatever we are is wrong, but it also seems like, are we shutting ourselves off from these other avenues of arousal and of connection?
Right. No, that's a super great question. So when you dive into this blueprint work, the first part is really important to learn what it is that you are. Because when we know what it is that we are, we can then start to identify. A lot of us aren't taught how to communicate what it is that we really desire in the bedroom, right?
Right.
And so this gives you a framework to start asking for what it is that you really desire. So once you've sort of established that and started playing in your own blueprint, having your partner feed you, also playing with yourself in your own practice and experimenting with that, once you've kind of, I don't want to say mastered, because there's really nothing here to master. We're all of these blueprints.
Yeah.
But once you've gotten a little bit firmer grasp and understanding of the blueprint that your primary is, the beautiful part is to expand into one of the ones that may be lower on your stack.
Yeah.
So for example, when I first took the quiz, I was energetic, sensual, and kink was at the bottom of my list. And so as I went through this program and learned more about it, then I started going, wow, kinky seems a little edgy for me. But then I started exposing myself to more kink, some BDSM. I started going to some kink parties. And lo and behold, I discovered that I actually loved playing with ropes. I'm totally being really vulnerable here, but I love being spanked a little bit more. There were so many of the things that I had kind of shut myself off of because I didn't give myself the permission to explore it, or I didn't really also have a framework either. So absolutely. The intention is that, we get to start learning how to play in all of these. And eventually we'd actually all love to be the shapeshifters, right?
Right. Or at least have access and choice, or combine them in new ways. Or it seems to me that exploring the kinky would maybe inform the energetic, right? Like, I get that they're distinct blueprints, but there's also, I don't know, it seems like unique alchemy between them.
Absolutely. There's an aspect of the energetic that has the tease, right? And so you can also play with the kinky in that you can tease in a mental way.
Right.
tease them and not give them what they really want. So yeah, there's absolutely interplay between them all.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. And I would also say that, like in my own experience as well, and what I've seen in couples is once you start to know your stack, like for me, my stack goes energetic, sensual, sexual, shapeshifter, and then kinky. And what I've noticed is when I'm with someone that knows how to move in and out of those, I can really move through those. Like they can tease me for a few days with a text, right, to warm me up, and then bring me flowers and light some candles. And then I'm already like, oh boy, here we go. It takes us a few little kisses, perhaps like on my nipples. And then I'm in like full on sexual mode, right? So when you start to sort of learn that sequence of even turn on for yourself, it gets to be just like this fun little game, right?
Yeah.
How am I going to turn her on tonight?
Right. So before we go to the partnered aspect of this, I did want to ask you, because you put a little note, we're preparing for this, about the shadows of each blueprint.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is maybe just explain that concept in case somebody isn't familiar with it. But
for sure. Yeah. So, there's positive and negative sides to each blueprint. And the shadow sides tend to be the one where there's shame or there's something that's particularly challenging about that blueprint. So with the energetic, right, the energetics are highly sensitive people. Like if your listeners have ever heard of HSPs, highly sensitive people, I often find people fall into this category who are HSPs. And what that just means is they can sense a lot without actually being touched.
Yeah.
The beauty, the gift, we'll talk both, like the gift and the shadow, right? The gift of the energetic is that, you can have your partner in another town and you can still be having orgasms, right? Without even being touched. So that's the gift of it. But the shadow can be that they're so sensitive they can short circuit. Mm. So if somebody comes in to touch an energetic too quickly or too fast, it can overload their system. So then it can take a while for them to get back into themselves and to back into the turn on. So that's kind of the shadow side. And then sometimes the energetics can have a little bit of that. I call it like the hierarchical, they often tend to be also into tantra and this is the spiritual way how to have sex, like a little bit of I don't want to say snobism, but this is the best way to have sex.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the,
is that not true of everybody? I just wonder. It seems to me that kinky or sexual or whatever, that everybody could be thinking, well, I've got the right way.
Yeah, I would say that generally sexuals tend to be the most stuck in their way. And they're in fact, that's their shadow, is it's really, really hard for the sexuals to understand, especially an energetic that needs all of that warm up. And because they do, again, that's their gift, 0 to 60, just like that. It's probably one of the hardest that I see in the pairings, but it's totally possible. It just takes a willingness to want to learn, right?
Okay. Yeah. And what's the shadow for the sensual or for the kinky?
Oh my gosh, for the sensuals, they can just get stuck in the little details. They can see a pair of socks on the floor and they'll be like, oh my God, that laundry needs to be put away. Or they can what happens with sensuals often for their shadow is they get stuck in their head. And so if they have someone going down on them, they might think, oh my gosh, am I clean? Do I smell? They'll be thinking about all those other little details, right? So yeah, getting in their head is the shadow for them.
Okay. How about the kinky?
The kinky is that sometimes they can get a little caught up in fetishes. So in other words, they have to have that fetish to be turned on. And then sometimes they're kind of ashamed of their kink and they're, owning what it is that really turns them on, that may be kind of out of the quote unquote norm. And sometimes, without education, they can kind of put themselves in more dangerous situations because they're willing to push the edges a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the shadow side of a shapeshifter? All of those, depending on where they are, or what's
it can be, but by and large, for the shapeshifter, the biggest shadow is that they're just people pleasers. So what happens, which can be the gift of it also, if that's your lover. But the short side of it is that then they get caught up often in what their partner wants, and then they lose track of what it is that actually turns them on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So. And the other thing is that they can get bored really easy. Like, it's just like, oh my God, this is so unsatisfying. Like do it all.
Hey, we're going to just take a short little break here, and I want to let you know about Intimacy with Ease, the method that helps otherwise happy couples create a sex life that is fun, easy, light for both people. So if you are an otherwise happy couple, if sex is the elephant in the room or sex is the little bit of the challenge for you guys, you may want to check this out. You can go to intimacywithease.com and you'll see information there. You'll see short videos. You'll have access to a full webinar about it, all kinds of information to let you know if this would be the right thing for you. All right, so let's talk about now the role of this in relationship.
Yeah.
So why is this so important to intimacy and connection? How do we navigate this when our partner has a different blueprint?
Yeah. Well, as I said, I think what's the most important in most any relationship, which I'm sure you see in your practice all the time, is the spirit of curiosity. Right? And so this gives couples a framework to be able to communicate with one another and connect on a deeper level. What I find is one of the practices that I always set people up with is just a short little dyad about, tell me something about what your desires are in the bedroom, right? And when we start to communicate these things and then actually start to play, it creates a whole other sense of vulnerability because maybe we're afraid of getting it wrong or asking for what we want. So it creates a deeper connection with the couples.
Yeah.
And as you know, sex can be so incredibly nourishing, right?
Yeah.
Some people dread it. A lot of people dread it and think, oh man, this might be something that I have to do or whatever. But it can be incredibly nourishing if you know how to feed one another.
Yeah. All right. So speak to that. I mean, like you said, it's a little bit like love languages. It's not that we insist on speaking our own. It's about trying to speak to our partner so they can receive it, right? So it's important to play in the other person's blueprint.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So, some different ways we could go through each of the blueprints maybe and just talk about their basic needs and things like that. So as I mentioned before, the energetics just want to they're really deep into connection, especially through eye gazing is a really great one. And the anticipation. So I often share with my couples, if you can send a text a couple of days beforehand, and you don't have to be explicit, right? It can be something as simple as I'm looking forward to seeing what unfolds, in 6 hours or whatever. Yeah. And there's a sort of language that kind of goes with that too, right? There's a little bit of flirting. It's not exposing everything. So it's just being a little bit playful in that way.
Yeah.
So energetics really thrive on that. Sensuals, I alluded to a little bit before also, if you can come home and run a bath for me, and if you put essential oils in it, you'll know your partner well enough to see, one of the things that I had a client the other day, she loved soft things. And so her partner bought her this really plush there's a name for it. I forget, but it's like this velvety sort of blanket. And so he got her naked and then just ran the blanket all over her. And she was like, oh my God, it was the hottest thing ever. They often love massages.
Yeah.
People often love massage, various different massages. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sexuals are visual people. So you can just send them a text of you maybe nude or partially nude, or I've got some really different tasteful porn sites that are really great, that are really artistic. And so people might send them a link. But it's really just about being forefront with body parts and genitalia for them.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. So then the kinkies, again, this depends on knowing, your partner and what their form of kink is.
Yeah.
Sometimes with kink, it can be, setting up a scene. So maybe your partner might like, if you're a nurse, so you might find a nurse outfit for them, or playing doctor, or, it really kind of depends on what their form of kink is or taboo is to them.
Which points to how important it is to have this communication going first, right? Like, we're not mind reading, we're not guessing, we're trying to really understand each other and then bring this into the play.
Exactly. Yeah. Permission is often a big thing for people who are kinky. And so, playing with different energies, maybe of doming or being submissive, or, some of those kinds of things can be a real turn on oftentimes for kinkies also.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So the shapeshifter loves it when you can just touch on all of those things.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I'm thinking about clients who have, I don't know if I want to say complained, but I'm not sure that's totally right, about their partner wants them to flirt, but they're not really flirtatious, or, all they ever want is a massage, or there's so much massage. I mean, I think this idea of blueprints, and it's their like love language, their erotic language, is helpful. It's not that it serves a purpose, this thing that they're asking for, like really plays into their arousal pattern.
Yeah. I think ultimately we all we want our partners to be happy. We want our partners to be satisfied. And so when we come to it with that spirit of desire in pleasing another, we can really let go of, like, sometimes what I see is people cling so much to the way that it should be, right? This gives more framework to just be more playful and fun and try different things and experiment, right?
Yeah. Now, you already said that the sexual is maybe the most difficult, or the more stuck or something, but like, what's maybe the hardest pairing?
In my experience, sexual and energetics.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the kinky, right? They're just the sexual is just so forward and straight at it. And, like, it's the energetic that's about the dance and the tease and the look at me in the eye and, know my soul. And, but it's totally doable. It's totally doable if there's a spirit of willingness to try new things and feed one another. And again, as I said, it's that curiosity, I love Betty Martin's work, The Wheel of Consent. I'm sure you're familiar with this, right? Yeah. Where you're very clear on consent. Okay, tonight, are we going to play in your blueprint, or tonight are we going to play in mine? Or are we going to, play back and forth? And what is so beautiful to see and witness in my couples that I've worked with is, once they get familiar enough, they get to then tune into the dance and let that be more mysterious, right?
Yeah.
But in the beginning, it's, it's going to be just a little bit awkward.
Right.
And learning the new framework. But then once they kind of get that, then it becomes even more fun and gameful, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So where can people find you, find more about you, and maybe get access to this quiz you were talking about? Or I don't know if you've got other resources you want to mention here too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all about bringing more pleasure into this world. And I especially love helping moms who get stuck in overwhelm and stress. And what I find is that pleasure is the juju that can help them really feel more nourished, find more vitality in their life, and ease. And so I've developed a program called the Pleasure Code, which has part of the blueprints in it. Because I think it's so important to know who you are in the bedroom. That's a really strong aspect of it. But there's also other modules about communicating your needs and your desires and how can you feel confident with yourself. And so the Pleasure Code is a course that I absolutely love sharing with moms as well.
Great.
That can all be found on my website at DD Haeg, HAEG.com.
Yeah, and I'll put the links in the show notes too, so it's easy for people to access that. So
Perfect. Yeah. And when they hop on there, they can find a guide, a ritual guide, as I'm sure you found in your business and practice as well. It's really important when we're overwhelmed to find a little bit of time to try to slow down.
Yeah.
And rituals are often ways that I find moms can do little things to help bring that awareness into the moment and to help get out of autopilot and slow down a little bit.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this and bring the topic to my audience.
You're so welcome. I'm grateful that you had me.
You've been listening to Better Sex. Please visit our website, bettersexpodcast.com, for show notes and additional episodes.
And that's a wrap for today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you are enjoying the podcast, if some of this material resonates with you and you would like to make a difference and make sure that this keeps coming out in the world once a week, ongoing, there are a couple things you could do to show your appreciation. The first would be to go to iTunes and rate and review the show. That really helps us be found by new listeners when you review the show on iTunes. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/iTunes. The other thing I want to invite you to consider is becoming a Patreon. For a small monthly pledge, you get some benefits. So for $2 a month, you get advance access to every single episode. For $5 a month, you get a chapter of my upcoming new book. And for $10 a month, I host quarterly get-to-know-you and question-and-answer chats over the web, and you get invited to that. I would love to have your membership in that, become part of the Better Sex family. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/Patreon, which is Patreon. Again, thanks for listening. I'm glad you're here. Feel free to comment, ask questions, get in touch. I'd love to hear from listeners. Thanks.